Hey everybody, Edo here, and I am excited because I have Helaina Cappel on the line. Say hello, Helaina.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Edo.
Welcome. And Helaina is the runs Kids Table Board Gaming. I've actually had the opportunity to play, I think, all of your titles so far.
Yep, yep,
You did Food Fighters. I always get this backwards. But Problem Picnic, right?
yep, that's
Problem
it.
Picnic and Haunt the House. Haunt the House. I mean, I've liked them all, but I really, really, really liked Haunt the House, and that Kickstarter was
Me
just
too.
successful.
Yes.
Um, and even more interestingly, and we're going to talk about this beyond the Kids Table Board Gaming stuff, you've now also started a new company label name called Burnt Island Games,
Yes.
and you will be launching a Kickstarter for Endeavor, which is this classic Z-Men game that Joshua Cappel did the art for with a number of designers, right?
Yes.
Uh,
Yeah.
Go
You
ahead.
want me to go into it?
Oh, just one more thing on the introduction.
Okay,
And so,
go, go.
interestingly enough, I just interviewed Josh, but you haven't seen that interview yet because it hasn't
No,
posted. So you have no idea what we talked about, what was said. This will post after that, but you haven't seen it yet. So I'm just
no, I
knowing this.
haven't seen it.
Lots of different things I want to talk about and hear your perspective on, including Endeavor. But to dive in to start, one of the things I'm curious about is how did you sort of start and get into Kids Table Board? Like, how did that manifest? Obviously, Josh was doing the art, but can you take us through that formation and how it came to be?
Sure. Well, I mean, since Josh has been immersed in this world of gaming, I too was immersed in it. Um, Interestingly, the game that really pulled me into to gaming was Endeavor.
Oh,
The
awesome!
first time I played it, that was the end of it for me. I just loved games, and I searched for so much more after it. I was immersed in this world, and it was around the time that we started having children, and I had this dream that I was going to have gamer children, and we'd play games 24 hours a day, and they would make games like their father, so when my oldest son, who is now 8, started trying to play games around 2, 3 years old, we'd get the classic stuff, because I thought that's what you did in those days. And I just couldn't stand them. They were just terrible. And I just, we did things so that we could change it up a little bit. We'd play with the same components, but we'd play a different game, so things would be a little bit more exciting for me to play. And then finally, I just said, maybe I need to start doing something with this. And Josh was a game designer. He had this game that he created, and he was like shy, I guess, at that time about sending it off to a publisher. And for years and years and years, I kept saying to him, it was an abstract game. I kept saying to him, Josh, you got to send it somewhere. It's such a fantastic game. I think that people are really going to like it. And he said, I really I'm not feeling getting an abstract game published. And one day in the car, I said, well, why don't we try to put some sort of theme on it, and then maybe work with the mechanisms of the game and see if we can marry that. And then Food Fighters came about, and we did a lot of work on it. And when it came time to start looking for a publisher, I just said, I'm going to do it. It's like our family game. We play it with the kids. It's the thing we love to do. We've worked so hard on it together. Let me see what I can do with it. And then, we decided to run the Kickstarter campaign, and it was successful. It was very successful for me for a first time Kickstarter. I felt really good about it. And then we just took it from there, and I loved being a publisher at that point. It felt like the right thing for me to do.
Well, and so here's where I have a number of questions. So one, what was your background before? I mean, what was your professional career or your schooling? Like, what did you do before you started doing this?
Well, interestingly, it had zero to do with games, and zero to do with running a business. I am a teacher, and I'm still teaching. full time. At the time that we started doing this, I was teaching grade 7 and 8 math and science and design and tech. And of course, I ran a game club at school, and whatever games Josh and I were working on together, I'd bring them into school, and the kids would play them and think it was so awesome that they were playing prototypes. But I really have no background in doing this at all, so it sort of just came out of nowhere.
So then that's a huge leap. Like actually, if I think back, he may have said that in his interview, but to go from no product management experience, no business experience, none of that, and then just jump into running a Kickstarter and starting a publishing company is a pretty big deal. And you did do well on that first campaign. Do you remember how many backers and how much did you raise?
I believe that we had almost 700 backers, and we raised $29,000.
Yeah,
it was
so
pretty
really
awesome.
Nice, healthy starting campaign.
Yeah.
And then you had to presumably learn all of the rest of the business, how to manufacture and ship and fulfill. So, one of the things that I'm curious about, because it comes up, is you then, and maybe there's some details in between, but that was a game, his design, or his abstract, you helped with the theme, you guys all play tested as a family, very much that indie Kickstarter creator narrative for, one way or another. That's sort of like, we really want to make this thing happen and we don't know what we're doing. But then your second game wasn't another game from your team, or at least from a design perspective, but something that you must have found because it was, what's the guy's name? It's the second time I've forgotten his name.
Scott Alms.
Scott Alms.
Scott Alms, yeah.
How did you go from, hey, we did this game as a family, to let's talk to another designer, or actually do more of what you'd consider a publisher approach?
Well, I really wanted to make Kids Table make it happen. And I feel like I want to continue publishing our games. I enjoy it. There are some games that we've designed that just don't fit under the Kids Table.
Sure. Well, it's a very specific brand, right? When you say, hey, we're about kids games, you can also play with the parents and that kind of thing.
Right. But I forget where we were going with this, because I just had
Well, how did you then decide, hey, I'm going to pick up a new design?
Right. So I wanted to make a go of it that was beyond just doing our own games. I wanted to put something else out there that fit within what we were doing, and felt like a kids' table game. What we want to show the world. And so one day I asked Josh for Scott Alm's email address, because they've done a bunch of work together.
Oh, so they had a working relationship prior. Okay.
They did have a working relationship already. And I contacted him and I said, hey, Josh's wife, you guys work really well together. Josh loves you. He thinks you're incredible. I was wondering if you would have anything that might fit into what we're trying to do here, because I get that sort of feeling that there's sort of a lot of his games are sort of on that level, and they could connect with what we're trying to do. And so he wrote me back right away, and he said, actually, I do have something. It's called Castle Toss. I'm going to send it to you. And I was like floored that he responded to me right away. He was so kind. And he sent it out to me, and Castle Toss eventually became Problem Picnic, Attack of the Ants. And all of the mechanisms stayed pretty much the same. We added a bunch of stuff to it, but the castle building theme didn't really feel kidsy enough for us. So, we changed that theme. Anyway, it was a pretty awesome experience, and it made me feel really good about what we were doing, because he loves what we do. So
yeah, well, so that's your second campaign, does well again.
Yes.
And so then, correct me if I'm mistaken, but returning to Haunt the House, that was you and Josh again, right? I don't think there was another designer on that. Was that sort of an alternating approach, or the design hit you, or were you like, no, let's go back to doing our own thing? How did that all work out?
We had been working on it for about 2 years, maybe 2.5 years, right after the success of Kids Table launching Food Fighters. We felt like we need to have some sort of follow-up. And it was before I thought maybe I'll publish other people's games. So we started working on a game. It actually started off being a deck builder. It still involved ghosts and haunting people out of a house. But it took us a long time to get to where we got to with it because we had so many different iterations, and some of them felt good, some of them didn't really feel good. And, you know, Josh and myself were both perfectionists, and if it is not perfect for us, we're not going to show it to the world. So it just turned out to be timing. We do have another game coming out in Kickstarter in a while after Endeavor, but that it's a Josh design, but it's Josh with someone else as well. So not trying to alternate, just whatever comes out when it comes out, I think.
Cool. Okay, and so then you do this thing that's super interesting, right? I mean, it's all interesting, but I always, as I'm watching other creators come through and try different things out, and you know, like, as far as I'm concerned, as you guys have established that glow-in-the-dark finish is like a thing that you can do now, and now everyone's going to be doing it. But you then have this opportunity, and it is something that Josh spoke of for Endeavor. And so if you're a regular listener, you'll know a little bit of this story. But how... So you've now split to a second company or second brand with Burnt Island Games. How did you come... I mean, first off, are they actually two different companies, or are they just two different labels within one company? They're
two different labels within one company.
So you have an LLC that's established, and this is a box brand name thing.
That's right. Yes.
Is the Kickstarter creator that this is going under going to be new, or the one that has 3 campaigns?
No, it's going to be new.
So that's a big choice. So can you just walk through, I mean, taking for granted, you know, that presumably the baseline here is one's a kid's brand and Endeavor's not a kid's game, and that's, you know, we felt like we needed something else. Can you take us through more of your thought process and approach to it?
Well, first of all, I felt like I wanted to publish Endeavor or reprint Endeavor for years and years and years. And like I said, it was my favorite game. It's the game that got me into gaming. It's still my favorite game. I absolutely love to play it. I love to play it even more now that we've added some stuff to it, which I may or may not get to later on here. But I needed to have that game, and I worked really hard to get it. The game has legs, its own legs. And its legs have nothing to do with kids' games. It has nothing to do with Kids Table, although I will be doing some advertising within Kids Table for it. Sure. It's got its own thing. It has its own following. There are thousands of people who say they want it on Board Game Geek. And so I just sort of felt like it doesn't need to have Kids Table to stand on its own. And so I started the second brand, the Kickstarter profile, and we're going to be doing the Kickstarter through Burnt Island Games because I feel like it can stand on its own. And an interesting thing, because I think we started advertising it so early, and we did come out and say at Gen Con on BGG that we were going to be publishing Endeavor, and I'm splitting it with Grand Gamers Guild. Mark from Grand Gamers Guild, he's working on this with me.
And they're local people you've worked with in the past, right?
Josh actually is doing some work for them. Yes. Right. They're awesome to work with. I could not have asked for a better partner on this. But when we announced that we were doing this and had the launch of the website, we had immediately, like I'd say within 24 hours, 900 people sign up for the newsletter.
That's a lot of
So
people.
that's a lot of people in 24 hours. A lot of people in 24 hours. And it hasn't stopped. I get 20 or 30 notifications a day, which to me is amazing because I have worked for 3 years already to get that same thing to happen for Kids Table. So, like I said, it's got its own legs.
Yeah, and you know, a lot of people follow games more than they necessarily follow companies, especially the smaller ones, right?
Definitely, definitely. And I think that actually says a lot about the game and says a lot about the industry because I don't necessarily want to know about the 30 games that a company is publishing. I want to know about the 3 games that I absolutely love that they're publishing. And for me, I would rather see a newsletter come out about a specific game than all 30 games.
Right. And in
Yeah.
some ways, depends on how Kickstarter creators stick with it. You sort of have that game channel to that group. I've found one of the challenges with that is that, say, on Facebook, you have different pages for each games. You end up having
Mhm.
1,000 people over here, 400 people over here, 200 people over there. Then you also have your company one, and it just gets all muddled, which is something
Right.
that I've struggled with. I also, you know, how you end up splitting that brand is interesting because part of that brand is also how you communicate what you're about, right? With Kids Table board
Right.
gaming and Burnt Out on Games, you know, Pencil First Games is really sort of an indie name. Like Design with Passion, Pencil First is really not a message to the end user, right? It's really about
Right.
how you make what you make and what you're about, than
Right.
it is like strategic, you know, fast and fun games or whatever, right?
Right.
And so, you know, when I look, I sort of have an emergent line in what we're doing around the
Mhm.
herbaceous and sensitive water, herbaceous sprouts, which is coming and all that stuff. And which is very different than say legendary creatures, right? And I sort of, I
Right.
don't, I'm trying to figure out what to do there. I don't think I would go so far. I don't know, but you didn't do two different companies. You just did two different labels, right? So you do have a
Right.
lot of flexibility there. It's not like you're suddenly trying to do tax returns on two different
No.
entities.
Oh my God. That would kill me.
Yeah, right. So it's really sort of how you brand, but you do then have to manage and maintain both, assuming you want to, right? So there's a lot going on there. Is there anything you're worried about, or you just feel like it's going to be fine and you got it totally under control?
I'm always worried about everything. I typically have everything under control. I worry about, my main thing with Kids Table has always been making everyone happy. That's all I want to do. I'm making games because I want to make people happy. And so I am really good, I think, at the customer service bit. But it's easy to be good at the customer service bit when you have 1,000 backers. I don't know what it's going to be like if I have 3 or 4 or 5,000 backers. I mean, I hope that happens. Who knows? But I don't know what that will be like for me. So that's the thing I'm most nervous about.
Actually, you might perhaps. You have two kids, right?
I do, yeah.
And you know how two two kids. I have two kids as well, right? But the second child isn't like a second child. It's like two and a half children,
Right.
because suddenly you have the child to child dynamics, and you can't have one parent take a break without overwhelming the other parent, right? Like it's just a totally, it's
That's so
not
true.
linear, right?
Right.
So to your concern, unfortunately, it's not linear either, because what you'll discover in short order, very quickly, is that every person and thing churns and creates issues and problems and things that need to be addressed, whatever it is, feedback, community, all that stuff. And there's just sort of a normal and natural capacity to like what you can handle without like imploding. Like you have your
Right.
like whatever your 2 hour of fluff time each day that you can sort of deal with the giving up to noise.
Right.
When you break out of that and you're suddenly dealing with more noise that's in that capacity, which happens once you break it into those bigger numbers, like you fail in much bigger and dramatic ways. Like you just can't handle it. And
Right.
so, not trying to freak you out, but for sure, the difference between a campaign with 500 people, from my experience, and 1,000, and the difference between 1,000 and 2,000, which I've experienced those
Yeah.
range. It's not like, oh, it's just a little bit more. There's this max limit, and when you break it, you're like, I'm completely overwhelmed and underwater, and I can't deal with all these things. So, you've done it. You need, people to support, and you can absolutely deal through it, but it does add up. When you look
Yeah.
at somebody like Jamie Stegmaier, who didn't, I don't know if it was, I don't remember what Scythe was. I think that might have been 20,000. There was a huge number, but managing and dealing with the energy of that campaign and some of the backer frustrations and all these different things and dynamics wore him out. And he's done a lot of videos, and I don't know if he's telling the story the same way, but wore him out of Kickstarter. Like, basically said, you know what? This madness, I really just want to make great games and get it to these people, and there's this other avenue I can take. And so it is a balance. It is something I think you should think about and prepare for, but sometimes, it's crazy too. But for me, reflecting and thinking about how it sort of, the scaling didn't naturally scale with my kids, I felt was like a really good analogy to, like,
That is a great analogy.
and so maybe that could, help.
Yeah.
Um,
Thanks.
so you have this, you've been at this almost as long as I have. I may have a year on you.
I think you do, yeah.
You started in 15 or 14? When was your first Kickstarter?
Yeah, I think it was 15.
Yeah, so I'm a year ahead, but you've done a number of campaigns, and they've been really successful. You're taking this new, bigger, known quantity, which in all likelihood, as you suspect, is going to scale you into new territory, because you have that base. Then you get your kids' table base, because the reality is those are still parents buying for their kids.
Right.
And they trust you and your brand, and if you say, hey, please look at this, they will, and some 30% of them will move over.
Right.
And then as those things explode, you then have this new big audience that just sees it and is word of mouth. And I've seen I know you guys are tweaking it and improving it, but I saw some of the art and work that I don't know if it was, I don't know how it compares to the original. Like, I didn't play the original, but seeing the new stuff, it's like hyper compelling. So I don't know if that's new or old.
Amazing.
But
the stuff that he did recently is, I mean, it's out of control. I can't believe that he could have improved on what he had before, because for me, that game, also the art in that game is just out of control. The box was amazing. It was a cartographer's bag, and it was the first time I had seen a Euro game that wasn't some old man standing looking over a what's it called, a landscape with their hand pointing in a direction.
Did you see that image on the internet today too? By the way, on board the board.
Which one?
Like, some guy just today. The reason you referenced it, he was like, my son learned Photoshop today, and he just did this image he's calling Eurogame box.
That's hilarious.
And basically, it's an image. It just made me laugh. It's an image where he cropped an old dude in front of a background, with a farm, like a church in the background with mountains behind it, and it looks like 50% of the Euro box is out there. But it was just funny that you were referencing them. Like, did you see that today?
No, I didn't. That's so funny.
Anyway, so yeah, and on the other hand, you'd like to think after the decades of time that's passed, he maybe got a little better.
Right. And he did. He did. I have always felt like his art is amazing, and every time he does something new, it just blows me away.
Yeah, I had the opportunity to play Scoville for the first time.
Oh, nice.
And I was really impressed with the presentation and and the look of that. Certainly it's a brain burner, but
it is. I love that game. I love it. I love playing it around.
Yeah, you just gotta. It's like, oh yeah. So I guess, in terms of the overall this channel and these interviews and stuff, I really just always try to sort of get a different picture and different angles. I mean, I think you're doing. You came out with a branded perspective from the beginning, which was really sort of strong and potentially limiting. you whether you knew it from the beginning or discovered it, you found it limiting, and now you've created another label for more stuff. I mean, that's like a mature business publisher approach. He's sort of like multi-position full-time, where he's got that sort of art director position, and then he has Josh, I'm speaking about, has all the different game art jobs he's doing. I think you said you're still a teacher. Is that correct?
Yes. Yep.
So where are you in that progression? Do you see this as something that you're eager and interested in becoming sort of a full-time thing? Or is it, no, it's a great hobby thing? Because you're starting to scale, right? You're starting to make it bigger.
Well, I wasn't sure what was going to happen at the beginning. But I just am loving everything I do in the industry. And I love teaching. I really do. But it's been 16 years.
Sure.
And I have taught everything from kindergarten to grade 8 and every single subject area you can imagine. I was even a math coach for a little while. So I was teaching teachers how to teach math. I feel like I have had a fantastic career. And I don't think I could leave it 100%. But I would like to try to move over for a little bit and see where it takes me. Because I feel like as much as I'm doing a good job publishing and as much as I'm doing a good job teaching, I think that if I gave publishing 100% of my time, I feel like I would be in a totally different place at the moment. So, I'd like to transition over within the next year or two, at least try it for a little bit. And if I see that it can't sustain me, then I'll go back to teaching and continue doing it part-time.
Sure. I mean, it's given how the depth of your experience, I mean, it seems like something that you could transition back to. Say, okay, well, I've tried this and I'm going back. Were you at either of the events this past weekend, PAX or BGG?
Unfortunately, I was not at either. Josh got to go this time, and I had to stay home with the kids. I shouldn't say I had to stay home with the kids.
Privilege.
I got to stay home with the kids. That's right. And we had a great weekend. So, but yeah, he got to go this time.
Did you send him pictures of the weekend to make sure he felt bad about it? Yeah,
I sure did. Yes. We went to the museum.
Look at these happy
we went
children.
out for dinner. They had a wonderful weekend.
Forgot his name and everything. And which one did he go to? PAX, right?
He went to PAX.
Right.
Yeah, he was at PAX.
Did you have a digest from him? Like how did he think of it?
I think he was standing behind the Endeavor board the entire time he was there. So from his perspective, he had so many people sign up to get the newsletter for the game. And that people were excited about it, and they were running over to say, "Oh my God, Endeavor, I'm so excited about it." So from his perspective, in that way, it went really well. He was working at the Grand Gamers booth, and they said that they were doing a great job there as well, demoing a few of their games. He didn't get to play any games, which was too bad. Usually when both of us are there, we get to play some stuff. Yeah. So I felt kind of bad about that because he had to work the whole weekend, but I didn't feel that bad.
And so what is the next convention that you are attending?
Actually, it is in Toronto. It's called Breakout Con. And it, I believe, is going to be in its third year. It's downtown Toronto. And it's one of the best. I actually feel like it's got people who come from all over the place, and I don't know how much people know about Toronto, but a lot of designers come from the Toronto area. It's sort of a
Game Artisans of Canada.
That's right, and Game Artisans of Canada. But Toronto is sort of a hub, with Snakes and Lattes started here, and it's a really awesome place to be. So when you go there, it's like you look around and there are all these like board game celebrities. It's really cool.
Awesome.
Really cool.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I'm still sorting things out on my end, and this may be 5 years in the future, but I'm very interested in sort of having maybe when my kids are maybe when my kids are 14 and 12, I can convince them to be like, hey, for the next 3 summers, like, can we just take a month and go on a road trip and like, let's do a Canada road trip and let's like film it. We can do South America. I just feel like it's been really interesting to me to get to appreciate and understand the different sort of cultures and backgrounds and sort of institution of games that have established in the in the different countries, and even the United States. I'm still sort of putting together the neural network of where everything is and who's from where and all that sort of stuff. There wasn't too many people from. I was at BGG. There weren't too many people from Canada. I don't think, but definitely ran into Daryl. I feel like Daryl goes to every convention. Period. There isn't a convention I've been to that he isn't at. But you gotta. He just, when you're that kind of designer, you could get your games going. You probably, he, like Scott, the kind of game. Hey, do you have a game that fits this category? He's like, let me check. This one from 1932. I feel like this is going to fit your problem.
He's so prolific. He really is.
Well, when you get it, when you know what you're doing. It's true. And so look, you have this massive, hopefully, presumably, expectedly massive campaign for Endeavor coming up with Burnt Island Games. That's in January. You have your next game in the works for Q1, beginning of Q2, whatever it is, for Kids Table. You're still fully employed, but you're looking at it and figuring it out. I mean, when you look at next year and you look at the challenges ahead, what do you think are, what are your key concerns, and what do you think are the key opportunities that you're trying to, when you think about 2018 in your head, how do you think of it?
I think of it as this is going to be my year to figure out whether or not this is going to continue as a full-time thing or as a part-time thing. I feel we've had much success, and I imagine that we're going to continue with that success. I know that Endeavor is going to be hugely successful, whether it's within the Kickstarter or after in retail. People just love the game. It's a really amazing game. So I look at 2018 as my year of what is the decision I'm going to make and where am I going to go with this? And is this going to be the year that I move into it full force, right? Or will it be telling that I'm going to be a teacher for the next 16 years and I'm going to publish games on the side because I love doing that?
Well, and presumably you have a natural point mid-year. I mean, maybe I'm mistaken, but like where, you're probably not going to like jump ship. I don't know. Maybe you are, but like before the end of the school year. But then there is this period, right? And that's not, you can't make that decision in February. You sort of have to wait until whatever May or whatever's responsible as a teacher. I have no idea what I'm talking about. But like, I guess what I'm saying is like,
you're close.
It's sort of, there's this little bit of a barrier to sort of see it out. And even if like January is incredible with an Endeavor, you still have to sort of wait and see how it progresses. A lot of people knee jerk on a Kickstarter and make a decision and then find out a couple months later or some other period that perhaps they reacted too quickly to the information,
Right. Well, if I was not going to go back to school for 2018, 2019, I would have to tell them by probably the middle of April. Sure. And I think that for me, that will be long enough to know whether I'll be able to sustain myself for a year. Which I mean, it's a cooling off period, which is great. I mean, everybody gets really excited after they have a $500,000 Kickstarter and think, okay, every Kickstarter I do for the rest of my career is going to be $500,000. And sometimes that happens and sometimes it doesn't. And, like there are a lot of people who go to it and say, okay, this is what I want to do with my life. I just happen to be very lucky that I do have a career where if I wanted to take a year off, I would leave unpaid and I'd take that year off and I'd do what I need to do to figure it out. And then I can go back to it.
It's a sabbatical. So you can teach a class on Kickstarter and you can teach a class on starting your own business. And, I mean, not going to be too many people with all that expertise.
Right. Right.
So it's super useful. Awesome. Well, thanks so much for all the perspective, right? It's super interesting to see how you've been successful and sort of taken on the game industry and got involved. And I mean, I really hope it's gangbusters for you next year.
Thank you so much. And thank you for having me. That was a great discussion. I really enjoyed it.
Absolutely. We're both just like at home but yeah. So I usually have a bunch of board games, but because of the time difference, my kids are downstairs going crazy.
Oh, yeah.
Come on upstairs.
Cool.
But the games are all down there. And by the way, just on the record, certainly whenever you're like, maybe we should get some people to play some of these games, like, I like your stuff. You can send
For sure. All right.
Cool. Anyway, so thanks everyone to watching as well. You can compare notes between the two episodes if you want to go back and see what Josh was talking about. But he actually really focused on the art side of things in his career. Right. But there might be some interesting. I think you both basically said the same thing. But thanks for watching and thanks for joining. And subscribe, share, all that good stuff, and play some great games. Thanks.
Awesome.